We are here today to talk about trade tariffs, which sounds kind of boring, but we're gonna hope to make it a little sexy for you. Obviously, trade tariffs have a huge potential impact on the design industry, and we're gonna get to that. But first, I'm hoping somebody here can just kind of give us the lay of the land. Like, what is happening right now with this trade war? Like, what is Trump doing? Anyone?
I mean, I think hopefully, I always try to take the optimist view, right? Hopefully what he's trying to do is create a level set globally, to kind of put America, back at the forefront in terms of our ability to sort of manufacture and to sustain ourselves in the long term. And unfortunately, I think in the near term, it's created a lot of challenges for our industry and many others. And I think specifically the furniture industry was not originally a target of the tariffs, and then all of a sudden, surprise, they became a target. But it feels, at least to us, maybe from a global firm perspective, like it's mostly geared to China, of course. And maybe we talk a little bit deeper about sort of what that is and why that's happening, further in the conversation. But I don't know, does that frame it up in a way that kind of...
Well, yeah, and there are also the 301 section tariffs that are being imposed. And then there are the retaliatory tariffs that are being retaliated with, not to mention other taxes and duties that are going up because of this. So the effects are far-reaching and wide, and it's like a network, of this intention to do something good.
Right.
Yeah.
And before we go on, I just want to introduce everyone. Sorry about that. Collin Burry of Gensler, principal at Gensler. Laura Guido-Clark of LGC Design, who's done work for Herman Miller and everybody. Primo Orpilla of Studio O+A. Ted Boerner of Ted Boerner Furniture Design. And Derek Chen of Council. So furniture designers, architect, industrial designer, architect. So we're going to talk about how, sorry?
Interior designer.
Interior designer, sorry. So we're going to talk about how the trade tariffs are going to potentially impact all these different industries. And maybe we can start with architecture, because I really haven't heard a whole lot about how these will potentially impact your industry. So.
Well, kind of right out of the gate, if you're in construction right now and you're getting pricing back, contractors have kind of put escalators in there based on the price of materials. So if you're coming out of the ground, concrete, steel, everything has just gone through the roof. So it makes it very difficult to kind of figure out what the total cost of a project is, because you got to buy up that material, and everybody's sort of like basing it on this inflated number now. And until it kind of settles, when he does put taxes on materials like aluminum and steel, it comes back in the form of pricing back on the project. And that's not even, that's before you get into FF&E.
Right.
That's just getting the building out of the ground. So I think someone rounded up the number, was like there's a 25% increase in materials.
Yeah.
So you're going to add 25% to the cost of a project before you add FF&E. So that's before we add furniture. That's just building it.
And so is that, do you worry that that's going to actually impact like whether or not clients decide to move forward with a project?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be a decision that they have to make. I think we're in a part of the economy is so strong, and some of these projects have been slated to go anyway, that what it does, it actually affects us on the FF&E, because then we're asked to change our spec in order to accommodate the building cost, which you can't trade concrete for a different type of concrete, right? You got to kind of use these materials, but the product that goes into the building can be eat out or changed.
Right. And that's going up too.
And that's going up too as well.
Same thing.
Yeah, we have a large public project right now that was priced, or budgeted about a year ago. And they just, the drawings, the CDs just went out and they went up 20%. So, I mean, that's partially, I think, the labor shortages that we're seeing in the Bay Area driving up the cost, but that was mostly attributed to steel and then also steel studs. So, and then there's surprises, like lighting is another one. I mean, it's already super expensive to build in California because of our energy codes, but a lot of the componentry that goes into lighting, like the drivers and other things, are mostly made in China, even if the light fixture is assembled here. And so those are, so there's sort of unforeseen things that we're seeing. Either clients are not able to get the lighting, or contractors not able to get the lighting in time, more of the cost has been driven up significantly. So.
Yeah.
And on the community level, I mean, I want to bring up that 30% of all of the homes are starter homes, and the costs are going up so much, it's already hard to live in the Bay Area. So when you remove that starter homes are going up, it becomes even more formidable, and we know we have a homeless problem, so I think that there's a huge trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about in the furniture industry? What kinds of impact are you seeing?
I would say first that I consider myself more a furniture manufacturer than a designer. And what that means is, you know, we take the designs and we get them made, we make them. And, you know, to this point, we've primarily used U.S. manufacturers. And the idea was that these tariffs are supposed to help the U.S. Manufacturing, but what we've really seen is it's kind of had a bit of an opposite effect. The first tariffs that rolled out were these raw material tariffs for steel and aluminum, and all that really meant was that our US-based metal fabricators couldn't buy Chinese or Canadian steel, but if we made things overseas, we can import Chinese-made chairs without those tariffs. That seems like that's going to be changing, but the initial effect was to put one of my suppliers out of business, where I was making chair bases in LA.
Totally out of business.
Totally out of business. They may reformulate, but for now, out of business. I mean, the whole premise, right? U.S.-based manufacturing is struggling and has been struggling. The idea that you would make it more expensive to make things overseas seems at a very basic level like it should help U.S. manufacturing. But what's really happened is the uncertainty. The uncertainty is a killer for every business. Because with uncertainty, you can't plan. You can plan. You can plan for almost anything. But if you just don't know what that guy's going to do, you can't plan. That'll kill any business. So if you're a struggling business and all of a sudden you don't know what's going to happen, what do? You shut your doors, right? Because that's the only thing you're sure of. You can stop the bleeding if you shut the doors. So that happened to, that's happened to one of my suppliers so far. And it's put us in a position where we may have to make some more things overseas, because it's a little weird, but 25% on top of something that's made cheaper isn't as a big, it's not as big a deal as dealing with manufacturers where we're not sure that they're going to survive.
Sure. Yeah.
I make most of my pieces in Los Angeles, and the shops there are scrambling. Every one of them, even the upholsterers. You think, what upholstery? Zippers, D-rings, and clips, and decking of fabrics, and that kind of thing. But I started to feel this back in March when I happened to be talking to my one of my metal fabricators, who does high-end pieces for lots of different projects. And he said, well, hang on, my supplier happens to be here. This is back in March when the threat of tariffs were being bandied about. And the guy started talking, and my first question is, where do you, my metal guy's supplier, get your metal? He said, from Brazil. He said, they're supposedly exempt, but they raise their prices anyway, out of panic.
That's what I was going to say.
The uncertainty factor.
And the uncertainty is...
If I know I've got to deliver this furniture in 8 to 12 weeks, I'm going to add 25%, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 8 to 12 weeks.
And it caused a run on a lot of materials. So materials were sold out. It causes longer lead times, higher pricing. So if you come out with a collection that's powder coated on steel, it's like twice as much as it was before, and the lead times are double or triple sometimes. So looking at furniture and introductions of furniture, that's going to change. Definitely.
Well, that is exactly where I started, powder coating steel. We didn't powder coat much of our stuff. We did plated. Which, and the story is kind of long, but what happened is, in this same conversation, I said, what is this doing to the quality of the steel? So all these big companies bought up all the steel, So you couldn't get it anymore. And the small shops that we rely on to create our nuanced, unique, individual pieces couldn't get it anymore. It was not available. And the price was going up. This is before the tariffs
Yeah,
even.
it was just the word. And I want to mention about what happens humanistically when we move from fear, when we come from this place of trying to hedge our bets. It is like one of the most annihilating ways to run your business because there's no solidity in your thinking. And that is exactly what's happened. Everyone has been upended. You're looking out for what you have to look out for, but it's causing so much stress, and the margins are not that big anyways for a lot of the manufacturers. So when that happens, it's really rough.
Yeah, so maybe you can talk about that a little bit. How is this actually going to impact the consumer of your products, whether, furniture or a building?
Well, prices are going to go up.
Prices
right?
are going up. Maybe we're a little bit removed from it because the cost in the Bay Area or just the build is kind of through the roof anyway.
Yeah.
And by the time they amortize and they kind of put a deal together, they probably considered that fluctuation in the price. So the cost to bring it built project to them is somewhat defrayed over a 5-year period, so they can kind of whatever that cost is for that new material might be sort of blended into it. I do think though, from the product side, designers want to get the right spec in there. So we're going to kind of defend the spec. And if it becomes prohibitive because the cost of that piece is 25% higher, sometimes the designers can make good arguments that we need to keep it in there because the concept is kind of held together by having all the right pieces in there. It has the spirit of it. So in some ways, the power of design and the designer has that in their hands to kind of play, that it's worth it. I feel sorry for the manufacturers who are trying to do releases now who have already manufactured stuff in another country, and now what I hear is they're debating who's going to eat the 25%. It's either going to be the manufacturer on the overseas side or the buyer or the producer. They're all debating, and a lot of products are being held and not being released simply because they can't decide who's going to pick up the cost.
Well, there's a weird race right now. I think it's November 1, right? The ships that
Yeah.
arrive November 1 have the tariffs applied. So anything that you can get in the next 2 weeks.
Get it?
Quickly, right?
but everything takes time, right?
Right.
So the panic is starting now, and
Yeah.
for new projects, prices are being raised.
Right.
We happen to have some inventory of parts. We got them cheap, right? Or we got them at the old rates, and now I've got to figure out where to make the new ones.
Right.
And that 25% or whatever isn't really going to hit the consumer of our goods until February, March.
Yeah.
And it hits in funny ways, right?
Yeah.
You just don't know exactly what's going to
I mean, I wonder if this was going to happen anyway, because China, as a communist society, they can sort of say we're going here, we're going there, and the whole society does whatever it is that they ask them to do, right? And so they've lifted more people out of poverty than ever in the history of the world, right? Yep. So that's a positive. That we've sort of been in a binge and all taking advantage in a big way of sort of very cheap products that are made there. It's polluting our air. It's not good, right? And now they've been trying to sort of build their middle class, and they've actually increased their labor rates, right? So they're not as attractive for us to make things as they used to be, right? So is this maybe a hedge to say this was going to happen anyway, or as like the wood manufacturers, I guess, migrated at some point from China to Vietnam or whatever, and like in a big way, like they all migrated there, right? So is there a silver lining in all of this that this was going to happen anyway? We're living through this incredibly painful period of time where there is uncertainty, our clients don't know, how to budget, or it is more difficult for especially smaller furniture manufacturers or whatever to sort of figure out how to navigate this. But in the long term, might this be okay? Is it a correction? Is it good?
I don't think it was
just to be a little out there.
I think it was going to happen slowly. It was going to happen naturally.
Okay.
As China gradually transitioned from being a producer for us to a consumer, right? And that's the thing. Like, they are a consumer now, and that's why the retaliatory tariffs have hurt so much, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly BMW, who spends all their money to build this plant to make BMWs in North Carolina or wherever, suddenly they can't export those BMWs to China and it's the consumer side that's
Right.
hurting them. It was happening gradually,
Yeah.
and I think with free trade, and it'll happen gradually, and the natural things will happen.
But it's
just throwing a grenade into the whole
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
It's the
isn't
uncertainty.
accelerating.
Yeah.
Isn't accelerating something that was naturally going to happen. It just fucks shit up.
Nor did they think about the
No.
effects of that. Yeah, which
But the
is-
Chinese define crisis as dangerous opportunity. That is their definition, actually, of crisis. And so I do want to go back to what you're saying about this capacity to think of the silver lining. For the longest time, when China produced furniture that was inexpensive, we actually believed that we were getting like 5 pieces of furniture for $1,299, and that was the way things should be. I'm hearkening back to the food movement, the slow food movement, where we really needed to understand where our food came from, where we need to value like what things are really about. And I'm asking, could this be the time when we actually look at what the true cost is? I mean, I know in fashion there's an amazing movie called The True Cost, and we're measuring, it's not just about what we get, or that it's $12.99. It's about the people we're asking to do things in their life that they should never be asked to do. I mean, I'm looking at this like, okay, so could we maybe collectively come together and think of this way of making people see the value of what all of you do so beautifully, and to see that maybe buying something once is the true definition of sustainability because you want it around, right? So I don't know.
And working with people that we know and we trust, right, that are going to do the right thing and treat their people well. And, you know.
Exactly.
And that is a hard thing to do.
Right.
It's not a hard thing to do because I believe in that. All the relationships that we have are good relationships. I treat people well on a personal basis. I know that they are treated well. So those relationships are key.
Yeah.
But when those, and I'm loyal to my shops, and there's been a lot of moving around lately. But when they start, I just talked to my metal guy today, the one I referred to before, and he says, like, we're scrambling every day. He says, I spend all day on the phone. And he says, and I don't know where this is going. I don't know what to do because my insurance is up, this is up, that's up, and I can't get material to do your pieces. I have to laser cut your material to get the material that you used to get regularly. And, you know,
Yeah,
it's like, so I think to be original, the reason that we're here tonight is like, you can't create the nuance that creates original design that is distinctive. It's like you start to get, you can only get, a 2 by 1/4 inch, metal right now. Well, that's kind of looks ordinary. How do you make it look unique? The finishes are compromised. You can't go from patina because the material isn't good enough to plate.
Right.
So you use powder coat. It's like, well, so can a lot of people.
Yeah.
So those nuances that make original design good and distinct are, it's like they keep chiseling away at my choices. I mean, this table that I have, our thicket table, it's like we used to plate it and patina it. It had a hand kind of quality. And we can't do that anymore because the material is cheaper. It won't take plating without 3 or 4 or 5 tries, which our plater charges us for.
Yeah.
Not just like, get it
No,
right.
right.
No, it's like we did it 3 times, you gotta pay 3 times.
Yeah.
5 times. So we can't do that. We need something reliable. So when that happens, you start to chisel away at the uniqueness of original design, and that hurts because at a high end where I play, it's got to be good. It's got to be unique, and it's got to be discerning for those clients that expect it.
Would it bring craft back, though?
Yeah, I was
You
That's
know,
what
will
I
it
think
bring
it
But at a high
something can't
cost.
happen there?
At a high cost.
I
Yes.
think
At
it
a high
actually
cost.
hurts it. I mean, for us, it hurts the artisan, right? Because we work with artisan manufacturers. They're all degrees of artisan, right? You sit with, on the most basic
Yeah.
metal chair base, you've worked with this factory and said, you know what, put the weld there, don't put the weld there. Let's do a nice TIG weld here. Don't just, it's all stuff that's not in the spec. You've gone to the factory 100 times over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty in their supply chain means that artisan doesn't know what he or she's working with.
Right.
Right.
So
Right, and you rely on
craft, yeah, maybe it'll bring back cottage craft, right? Like the one person who carves a chair in their wood shop, sure, maybe that's never gone anywhere. Maybe we can get back to that. But you know, you want to put 500 of those in your office tower.
It's going to be harder. Yeah.
Do you think that this then puts the onus on companies to better explain what the value is of their products or your firm?
You can explain it all you want, but you know,
There's a
$500
breaking
square
point.
foot,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's part of the thing that we can do is to educate our clientele to say, here's what goes into this. Because, you know, like you said before, it's like we've got so used to getting things cheaper.
Yeah.
Get all of it. So I can get this for that.
Well, and now free shipping.
Yeah.
I mean, now at shipping, you go, what? I got to pay for shipping?
Oh,
You know, like,
returns if you don't like it.
yeah.
Sorry, not in our industry. But
Yeah.
but so you can educate to a point. But you said it, it's like there's a breaking point.
I also think, I mean, this group has always done that, right? We've never competed with IKEA. We've never tried. We've never been able to. It doesn't matter.
No, we just buy them.
Yeah, that's what I can afford.
Yeah.
Well, so what recourse do you have in the design industry?
Innovate.
Anyone?
Innovate, sourcing
think-
new
yeah,
materials, really looking at innovative materials, working together, you know, advocating, you know, about what this is doing to our industries together. I think that could be really powerful and forceful. But, you know, we have to move now.
We are designers,
Yeah.
which are essentially optimistic.
Yes, we
We're
are.
problem solvers. That's
Yeah.
what comes with what we choose to do. So when you go out there and, okay, these are just limitations. I like limitations. They
Yeah.
help push you this way or that way. So when you are doing a new product, and this is the distinction, it's like doing something new in this climate is a different thing. So you
Yes.
move down this path, you say, okay, I'm not going to use steel right now because it's not a...
Right.
Yeah. So you start to innovate in that way. You find, I don't know, maybe pine cones are a good thing to do right now.
I can help you.
Them, really. But it's
Yeah.
a really good to remember that we design from a sense of positivity. And that is where
Absolutely.
we come from.
Right.
So, okay, tariffs, yeah, okay. Well, my products that have been making my living for the last 25 years, some of them are still in the line. Like, those are the ones that are challenged because I can't change those.
Right.
Designers rely on those to specify again and again. If I start taking away some of those nuances that make them good, I mean,
Yeah.
I got to move faster.
Yeah.
Design faster, make mistakes faster, I think is the thing.
I mean, I'd like to be able to do that, but I don't do that, right? I mean, we just can't. We need to feed ourselves on the things that we've developed over the last years. That's what feeds us. And then if we innovate, that's what's going to feed us in 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it's not
And
immediate.
So for me, I mean, I keep going back to the uncertainty. For me, do I want to place a 2-year bet today based on today's environment, or do I want to wait it out?
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of sticking my head in the sand a little bit. I'm going to wait it out. Who knows? We got elections. And
Yeah.
We can also all vote. Please vote. Yes.
I know.
so I'm going to at least wait till November.
Yeah. Wait till
Yeah.
But do you think that this is going to cause like a polarity of like it's either going to be things that are really, really expensive or really, really inexpensive, and everything like what's happening in the retail world is what's going to happen in our world, that we may just get, you know, totally fleshed out because people who could still afford the high end will still afford the high end and they'll move to the low end, but everything in between is where the struggle's going to happen. I'm just posing a question.
According
I
to
don't know.
Trump, nothing is going to be more expensive. Everything's
Yeah, I
going to be
forgot.
just the same.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah.
Well, I think our clients are used to high prices. I think all of ours are to a certain degree. And that is, but there is a breaking point. But over the last 8 years especially, there's been a rise in products that are really good, that are available at all levels, from IKEA to Design Within Reach to anywhere in between. So when our price hits a certain level, our ceiling, like goodbye to that one. And well, there's plenty of others. Didn't used to be like that.
Yeah.
We had a much more exclusive, distinct market, and that's, that's.
You think
so
that-
we do compete on price, even though our clients are, used to the high price and they will pay. But and when like I've noticed recently, our highest priced products are the ones that sell right now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
$21,000 cabinet.
Was that just San Francisco in 2018?
No. It's interesting. That,
No, it
like,
is. I mean,
but
that's the high end of it. That's the part that people who can afford it still can afford it.
I can't afford my own
I know.
furniture.
I know.
Let leftovers me
Yeah.
take, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that we all, you have a great market, and it's sort of in the contract furnishing market where we're at, a tech company I would admit that the design IQ has just risen greatly.
Yeah.
So now you can kind of talk about an Eames aluminum group. You can talk about these things, and they go, I get that. The soft, yes, we need that. So you kind of have to realize that you're going to get some victories, and I think what you're saying is that maybe the balance should be that we shouldn't get all this stuff for a cheap price, because we devalue it, becomes throwaway. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody's seen the new Dieter Rams film, but Dieter Rams is sitting there at the end, kind of looking, what did we create? All these things going to the landfill. It's like
That's it.
this ease of getting product and
Yeah.
the cheapness that we brought it to has kind of created these hills of plastic
Right.
and waste. So maybe if we place a bigger value.
Well, that's the
on
true
longer-
cost, right? That's the true
Yeah,
cost of
exactly.
it, right? Not just the price tag, but all the things
Right.
that it causes. And that's why one of the things was it's a circular economy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, companies like GM who had $1 billion, in terms of, profit value, it's because they moved to a circular economy. They're looking at pollution, they're looking at waste. They keep materials and products in and they cycle those. We're going to have to start thinking of that. And it's not easy because when you're a smaller company, it's not easy. You know what I mean? So I think they're different. We're going to have to look at a lot of different things, I think.
Well, let's hope it's good for you all, because if we think about our clients right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many things do our designers specify from Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel and West Elm or whatever?
right.
And it's not contract grade. It will not last, right? It doesn't last, right? But they want it for that moment or whatever. So maybe this is the reset that once the costs go up in some of those items, because
Right.
West Elm now has to pay 25%
Right.
more,
Right.
50% more, or whatever.
still
That
cheaper.
maybe it's still cheap. But nonetheless, it's like,
I know you guys are like, so what?
I remember when we worked on startups and we tried to save every wall in the space.
Yeah.
right.
We didn't do the scorched earth effect and then come back with a new. We worked with what we had
Yeah.
Yeah.
and made them anew. And I love that. And now it's more, we have less of that. And I think we need to go back to that. Because you always, in California, you always designed with the sustainability. You didn't want to fill the dumpster up, right? You tried to save the doors.
Yeah.
You tried to move as much around and kind of work what was there.
Heirloom thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's just like,
Wipe it out.
wipe it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the truth is, a lot of our clients are these startups, right? And they believe that 5 years from now, they're either going to be 10 times bigger or gone.
Sure.
So they're not expecting to value those four
No.
walls.
No, but
But we
that's-
can, the developer, if you design it right, and I always talk about the long-term effect, like that, you're gonna be out of the space in 5 years. I want to make it so the developer can get the next tenant in there and utilize the space, not just bring it back to stud again.
No.
So if we're thinking in that way all the time, then the thing can be moved forward without the waste. With the way we think right now, you're right. It is like, oh, I can get it better, faster, cheaper. I just need to demo it. And maybe we need to kind of recalibrate that.
So
I don't
the
think
real
that's a bad
is
thing.
a silver lining here, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're hoping.
reset.
We're the optimists.
Yes. The optimist
that.
problem solver.
So what advice do you have to these small businesses that are being impacted by trade
Small businesses?
tariffs? First, let's start there, and then we can talk about bigger.
You mean the designers?
Yes, other designers.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's funny because it seems like there's
Try
a
another
lot
field.
of new, really interesting furniture companies that our designers are finding on the web or whatever that we have access to that we've never had before. I hope they do okay because they're really innovating and they're bringing a lot of really amazing American product to market, right? Let's hope that that continues. Hopefully, they don't have too much metal in the products, but I don't know. So again, let's not, I mean, I hope that
Well,
they
I
don't
think
go
it
away,
could,
but.
yeah, I think it's from a design, if we're talking about design, we're talking about that optimistic place. So if we're designing not in reaction to the COO, the current occupant of the Oval Office, I say COO, but to design from our place of value, what, you know, and how people live, we're going to create better products. And you can't help but respond to the current climate of the economy. That's what we, especially young people.
Right.
I mean, I'm older, so, and been around for a while, so I tend to kind of want things to be the way they used to be. You know, it's not going that way, it goes the other way. And the young people kind of come in the way it is. So that's very, very positive, I think. And
I feel like things haven't changed so much for people who want to design product. It's when they have to make them. The landscape has certainly changed, but for a new company coming into that landscape, they're probably better structured to deal with it, right? I think a lot of the change will happen naturally as the business environment, the tariff environment either sticks or doesn't stick. I do think that design doesn't stop, creativity doesn't stop, innovation's not going to stop, and it's going to be sized right and developed right to fit the emerging landscape.
And it won't be metal.
Yeah.
It might be metal. I mean, it will or won't be, right? Metal's a cheap way to make strong stuff.
Yeah.
But is there
Law
like,
of nature, that's not going to change.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. But I was just wondering, is there opportunity for us to help each other more, to be part of a greater good, a greater whole? Because I think sometimes we get siloed, you know, as smaller businesses, and we keep moving, but we're sharing these same things. And I wonder, you know, Be Original started because we were sharing these same things, and look at what they've done in such a short period of time. So I'm asking myself, is this a time when all of us could come together as, you know, people who are looking at beauty as the greater good or design as the greater good and helping each other through the bumps, you know, that are happening? And I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a lot of solutions that collectively we could do versus singularly.
Yeah,
Because our things are going to outlast this administration.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, we're living in a fascinating time where we're seeing such a cliche, but a generational shift, right?
Yeah.
As the leaders or the elders, like what are we teaching the next generation in terms of
right.
how to think, how to react to these situations, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's right on.
I imagine you have a number of young people in your firm. So.
Yeah, we have a lot.
You include.
And they're awesome. Yeah.
And that is who is picking up the mantle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're amazing. Yeah, and they're
Spend a lot of time
hungry.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not so bad. I don't know. They do good research and find interesting things, and yeah.
But there's a good dialogue in there, right? And especially about things that are happening. They're not just happening to one person. This is happening to all of us.
Yeah.
You know, even the way we can mitigate fear by talking to one another and coming together as a group and saying, you know, let's not think in this way. Let's look at things. I mean, I'm looking at how much good could I do in the world? That's what I'm thinking right now. I'm like, I'm going to balance this by doing everything I possibly can to do better things in the world.
Exactly.
Because the world needs it right now.
If we listen to the noise, you know who won, right?
Yes,
and we can't
and
listen
we
to the
cannot
noise.
do
And,
that.
yeah.
And we're stronger together anyways, you know?
Yeah.
So,
That foundation of creativity
Yeah.
is stronger. It's kind of like a prairie. I'm from Wisconsin, okay? So you have the network of all these plants that get intertwined. We're doing that quietly and creatively
Yeah.
and positively. This all sounds so great, but what does it look like every day? It's a different story, but
Sure.
that's there.
it is there.
Yeah.
This has always been a pretty cooperative and
Yeah.
helpful, mutually helpful industry. Right?
Yeah.
We all
Especially here.
want to make
Yeah.
beautiful
No,
spaces for
it's
our
true.
clients. And
Yeah. Our pieces get used together, not instead of.
together.
Yeah.
We've shared suppliers in the past, maybe we will again.
So it sounds like there's a business cropping up here, maybe. Some sort of portal for.
Yeah, I like that.
We're going to work together.
When Primo joins Gensler.
You know, one of my
started it,
favorite
Yeah, right.
territories for design is Portland. I've judged a lot of competitions there. And I love the way a 4-person or a small practice, they actually have a shop in the back and they make all the stuff.
Yeah.
And I love, it's just a great ecosystem. Everybody kind of knows, oh, that's a fieldwork project. And we used to have practices that did that, the design build. And, I love that because there's a whole generation that is very interested in that.
Yeah.
And I think as a...
And there's enough of them.
And there's enough of them. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I don't see why that can't happen again. I mean, it did exist in San Francisco for a long period of time. And then it kind of, I think as tech developed and we became more commoditized, right? We're just like doing things
Well, that's
like this.
tech thinking too.
Yeah.
Because I think this is something we have to be mindful of, and I know for me this was really hard.
Yeah.
Is like I would be trying to perfect, like, oh my God, and they go, oh, Laura, you'll get, that's like 2.0. You'll get that in the next. I'm like, but I know it could be better. Like, don't take that away from me. I want to make it better.
Right.
And that's a different way of thinking, and I appreciate that way of thinking. I think it's about where we employ that thinking and how we employ that thinking that we have to be mindful of, right?
Yeah, I think that like the tech thinking you're talking about is I think there are a lot of people whose impression is that the manufacturing part of the process is just hitting a print button. And it doesn't really happen that way. That's where the artistry happens. That's where, that's why our businesses are in turmoil, because we care about how things are made.
Right.
And if we do go back to the shop that designs with the making in mind, they understand the making side of it. That can only be, at least personally, I like that better.
Yeah.
So should everything be 3D printed, even furniture?
No, I mean the opposite, right? Like,
It's just another tool.
We can get the raw material easily, right?
It's the design is about constraint, right? And it used to be the craftsmen who would do a lot of the design. And They design for their capabilities. They design what they do, and then you can see the signature in the product.
Absolutely.
And you see the signature in the building, and
I think clients and customers are more willing actually to have that experience. They're willing to pay for that bespoke. I hate to use it, but they want something custom to them.
Right.
So it's great. It's great for design. It's great to put that pressure on us, because then great things come from that.
yeah, this doesn't look like it got put in a box in
No.
Shenzhen.
No, exactly.
Well, that's been something I've really enjoyed over the last 10 years, is watching the small, anything from Etsy to whatever. It's like people they're kind of drawn to making things.
Right.
They're drawn to things that are made and you can see the hand. Right. That's not going to go away.
Right.
That
Well, even-
encourages me.
yeah.
But
So there's hope.
There's
Yeah.
hope, but I think
hope.
even more so now, right? I mean, because
Yeah.
if what we currently knew as a material and so much of how we innovated or we designed with that material is gone, we have to go back to something else, right? We have to tinker. We have to think of new ways of doing things, new materials, and I think that's kind of heartening in a way. I mean, it always leads to something new. It's just a little painful in the beginning because we have to.
A couple of years
This
ago,
has been like therapy.
a couple of years ago at the Milan Furniture Fair, we were lucky enough to go to the B&B Italia factory. And then on the same trip, we talked to the CEO from Walter Knoll. And B&B is all about mass production, right? Like every single piece, even though they're beautiful, right? It's about how can you put this on a conveyor belt system and all these, robots and things that basically build these pieces of furniture. Nothing's done by hand except for maybe the slipcover that goes over in the very end, right? And Walter Knoll was like, we're not doing that because the moment that my craftspeople that have, are these apprentices that have gone from generation to generation and taught this, the moment that we move to that world, it's gone forever, right? Which was kind of fascinating. It was a very different sort of view of the world and sort of where we're at. But
So I have to stop everyone
Yeah,
there.
that's right.
We are out of time, but I think we have a couple minutes for Q&A. Yeah, okay. Thank you, everyone. Any questions?
I can't help but think in all this conversation about how we live in this bubble, and that your tech clients building spaces, the price went 20%, they're going to cover it. Your clients, like you're saying, Ted, can afford their furniture then, and they can afford it now. And it's like, what happens to the people that are in Omaha?
yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like we still live in this bubble. We're all kind of trapped in this bubble.
Speaking of tech,
Technology.
It's tech.
No, but that is true. I mean, that's why I wonder about this whole space in between.
yeah.
Maybe we'll end up with the IKEA, and you
It could be.
It'd be terrible.
I mean, you
Well,
know.
it's already, we're kind of there already. aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I do, I mean, retail's become like that, right? The middle, like yesterday, wasn't it, Sears just, I mean, a lot of those people that are sitting in that middle space that don't really define or haven't, they've been generalists, it's a tough one. It's a tough world out there now.
It's too late to bring back North Carolina. It's sort of,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
You design for your environment, Jim.
Oh.
This is their environment. They're designing for that environment. I would say that you also have to pause and say that this has happened before. It's happening right in front of us, like yesterday or today. Sears went out of business, right? This is the company that produced all of these pieces for the cities and the Victorians. You know, mail ordered, it was innovation once.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on for
A long
100
time.
years, 130. And you guys are now staggering for the first time, perhaps, or maybe it's happened to you before. And how did you innovate the last time? And I want to hear how really you're going to innovate the next time. I know you want to, and that's the natural thing. What is the strategy? How will you innovate?
I will say the premise is different, though. Sears is going out of business because that's natural evolution. What we,
Right, but you
the
always
premise,
do at a faster pace.
I
You're hit by forces
I
that-
disagree. I do think the recent tariff situation is unnatural. I think that's regulation driving something towards perhaps an evolution, but it's not natural in the sense that you could predict it. If I asked you 20 years ago if you thought Sears was going to be around in 20 years, you probably would have expected something to change, right? I mean,
I would have said, yeah, it's going away.
yeah, it's going away, and that's because 20 years ago Amazon was founded, you know, or probably 15. I don't know, but
Without Amazon,
Yeah.
the Sears was struggling. Was that time had come and
in
gone?
fact, didn't Sears kind of go out of business then?
I
Yeah,
think it's,
they kind of keep dying and
yeah,
defibrillating.
It's that final tour, that final tour.
yeah.
Yeah. We do it every 20 years.
But you had setbacks before. This isn't the first one. So how did you change the last time, and how will you apply that knowledge to this one? Is the question, the tariff question.
I mean, I think of the last recession, right? I mean, it was
Yeah.
brutal,
It was
right?
brutal.
And I remember this woman that I work with, we created this program called The Upside of the Downturn to focus on all the positive things that we could do collectively. And we had a lot of like client meetings and invited folks from the industry and we had a lot of discussion around how to turn this around, right? And it happened, right? So I think it's like, it's the how is I think that we need to band together, we need to share, we need to collaborate, we need to work together and educate our clients, right? I think that's probably the how, and to innovate ultimately, right? Because if it's not going to, like Arthur Gensler always says, like if it's not working, change it, right?
Right.
So if we're just stuck, like Sears was just sort of stuck and not willing to change and hoping that maybe something eventually was going to, something change in the, a greater society that would allow them to go back to being successful. It didn't happen, right? So.
In your market, why would you be forced to innovate? Because all you have to do really is that this market can afford more and more. So you simply have to educate them to pay more.
Simply have to.
Yeah.
It's like a.
Well, but Zahid,
Why would you need to innovate?
it's going up. It went up 10% last month. It's going to go 25%. We put out a price
November 1.
list that we used to be able to hold for a year. Now it's like we have to put something on our price list that says prices can go up at any time. Be prepared. We can't do that. So we, at some point, just from a business point of view, we have to say, here are our prices, and then at some point the prices are going to go up during that time, and then we'll take the loss because we have to give our clients sustainability. But to your point about innovation, yes, we absolutely have to. We're business innovators as well as just a product. It's like, okay, how do we respond to this? I actually don't know because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
I didn't sign up for an innovation. I signed up for an evolution, right? I expected to have to evolve.
Right.
Any business has to evolve.
Yeah.
But these generational events, and this feels like a potentially generational event, these aren't supposed to happen every 10 years. Recession 10 years ago, tariffs this year. Like we expect to evolve year to year. and that's in our makeup, and that's in your annual price list. That's everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is a little bit, it's different.
We're on our toes for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about it.
I have a question which relates to all of you, I think, but maybe more firsthand from those people that are specifying, but then eventually you competing with what they might be specifying. And it has to do with this notion of picking winners and losers, which I think is a lot of what's going on here, which is why it's so confusing, because we're not quite sure how that's going to shake out. And the focus of the conversation thus far has been on local manufacturing or Chinese manufacturing. And I'm curious about how it relates going the other direction to Europe. You brought up Walter K, B&B, and those are sort of, I think, interesting companies in terms of how they sit on the opposite side of things in this old world fine manufacturing. And I'm just curious about how the winners and losers are shaking out with regards to Europe, who are not being impacted by the same tariffs. Obviously, the raw materials are going up generally speaking, but because they're also not impacted by those tariffs, and the war that's happening in China, I'm just wondering if you're seeing how that's going to shake out.
I think B&B makes their frames in China. I think a lot of the European manufacturers make things in China. Walter Knoll maybe not, but I think they're the minority.
It depends on what. So B&B for us, in terms of the companies that we represent from Italy and from Europe, would be the exception as opposed to the other way around. At the very high level, they're keeping most of their manufacturing actually still very much in-house and supplied from other Italian small manufacturers. B&B is much larger, and they're kind of leading that charge away from that, and I think most of our manufacturers are actually reacting against it.
I mean, I think for what you do, you probably know better than we do, right?
Yeah, I know.
The impact of this. I mean, the dealer that I had lunch with today was like, we're not seeing price increases yet from Europe.
Exactly,
But,
it's not doing anything for us. Right?
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm here because I thought the conversation might go a little differently in terms of like prognosticating like where this is all going, and I know that we don't know, and so to me, it's not impacting us as I can tell. None of our manufacturers are saying get ready for the big price increase.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I don't think, for us, it's, I mean, for you as well, as the designer, kind of the keeper of the spec and the design intent, we will guard everybody's spec. If it's a 25% jump, and it's, sometimes we'll argue that incrementally it's not a big cost in order to get the space that way you want. I mean, we're designing to a certain look and feel that we want the client to have, and we've sold them on this concept. So typically, we don't like to monkey with it, even when increases come back, because we can say, well, okay, we'll take away from here in order to get that perfect piece. So in a lot of ways, we'll defend a spec because we know it's important to the overall outcome of a project. And I think, yes, we're in a bubble. We're in a market that can support it for sure. I don't know if this would play in Oklahoma or in another market, but for this particular market, people are willing to buy that. In the long term, and in other markets, that could be different. I know that some of our manufacturers that we work with do manufacture their pieces from China, and we know that there's going to be something in a price increase at some point. Will we end up saying no to those things? Probably not, because design kind of means something now. The importance of having the curated space, the right environment, is an all-time value to companies. So in the residential market, it's the same way. I mean, you have a market that just, I want this. This makes sense. I will pay the upcharge on that in order to have it. So I kind of like your idea that it's balancing out. That we got it way too cheap for a long time, which created all this waste and disposable thinking, right? In Europe, they kind of know better than that, right? You buy a toaster, you have that toaster for 15 years.
Exactly.
You buy a good Doulette,
used to be-
you don't need another
Absolutely.
one, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe America is now becoming a little bit more sophisticated because we never sold aluminum group chairs 10 years ago. We sell more of them now than we ever have, and that thing cost $1,200 landed. And people are buying they want that.
Right.
So I think maybe the quality is coming back, maybe the understanding that if I get that right piece, it's worth it. And I don't need to toss it into the dumpster,
Right.
So maybe we can change that. And the great thing about California, people do look at us and they go, well, they're doing things in a certain way. If we can be more sustainable in the way we build out and demo and do things, maybe that can impact the industry and kind of saving things from the landfill, doing things the right way, hiring the right trades, the value of the artisan, the value of the maker. I think we all believe that here. That's
Yeah.
why this ecosystem's so good, because we
Yeah.
all believe they contribute to the pieces that we create.
So, to Derek and Ken, so your companies, I'm fairly familiar, and your companies are not enormous.
You're looking at my company.
Anyway, I know the level of quality that you guys produce. I'm wondering why you don't pivot, because you can, you're small. Pivot to somebody like Canada, or, one of these places where we don't have these trade embargoes yet.
We did briefly, Canada.
Okay. And, maybe you know the latest, but the point is that they're right there. They're next door neighbors. The level of quality is very high. The amount of materials that they have, amount of material. And I'm just wondering, is that
I make some parts in Canada. I mean, I will say this. Outside of tonight, I don't think too much about that 15% or that 20% that we're paying. I focus more on finding the right people to make things, and that's a hard enough problem. Quality is a bigger problem.
you mean to develop the relationships?
The relationships with the artisan manufacturers who are sized right for a company of my size. And they are currently all over the US and in Canada. I don't just make things in California. I make things in Pennsylvania, Canada, upstate New York, right? And the hard part is to find hopefully a small number of suppliers, build a really strong relationship with them, and then try to support each other.